The cut flower industry in Colombia started in 1961 when the United States President John Kennedy started the Alliance for Progress program to help Latin America economically and socially. The program found the potential in non-traditional agriculture in Colombia. Colombia's temperatures, growing seasons, soil, water supply, and proximity to the U.S. made it an ideal location to grow and export flowers. Edgar Wells, a Colombian, is also given credit for starting the Colombian flower export industry. While visiting New York City, he noticed the prices people were paying for cut flowers and the available flights from Bogota, a city in Colombia, to Miami. He started his cut flower export company on October 18, 1965, and his first shipment was worth $20,000. Before the cut flower industry moved to Colombia, a few states such as California and Florida grew flowers. However, the agriculture conditions and significantly lower land, labor, and energy costs and cheaper flower prices for Americans made Colombia the ideal place to grow this industry when good flower transportation methods were developed. Today, the Colombian flower industry is known for its roses, carnations, and orchids. Colombia has the largest number of orchids in the world and exports more than $1 billion of flowers every year. The decrease in demand and inability to transport the supply of cut flowers during COVID-19 greatly impacted the flower industry. The spring season is the busiest time of year for the flower industry because the largest amount of revenue is generated from spring holidays such as Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, and weddings. Unfortunately, the first COVID-19 lockdown started on March 15, 2020, 4 days before spring. Schools started to close, weddings were canceled, visitors at healthcare and long-term care facilities were restricted, and other CDC restrictions were initiated that led to the decrease in demand for flowers. For example, Tilly's Flower Shop experienced a 50% decrease in sales by March 16, 2020, and a 60% decrease in sales 10 days later. Unfortunately, florists and flower farmers still had supply when demand was decreasing. This is because farmers plant seeds roughly 8 weeks before flowers are expected to be shipped. There were many unknowns that surrounded the pandemic, and people in the flower business did not know how to act. However, the industry was able to bounce back. Today, the flower industry is doing better than it was pre-pandemic. This can be attributed to the increase in demand for weddings, funerals, and other ceremonies that were canceled during the pandemic. COVID-19 disrupted the flower supply chain at almost all points, which ultimately negatively affected the U.S. economy. Lockdowns forced people to cancel their weddings, birthdays, and holidays, and because people were not buying flowers, florists had to lay off employees or close their stores. Although majority of the U.S. gets its flowers from Colombia, there are some flower farms in California that supply flowers as well. 80% of cut flowers grown in the U.S. come from Central California. Before the pandemic, this flower industry was worth $360 million. However, due to the pandemic, cut flower sales and workforce fell 85% on California's flower farms. This negatively impacted the U.S. economy because the already small U.S. cut flower labor force became even smaller. The flower industry also competes with offshore production, and the pandemic made that situation worse. The flower industry in the U.S. struggled during the pandemic because there was a lack of floral industry data from the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic that could have helped flower businesses make good business decisions in uncertainty. Ecuador is one of Colombia's biggest competitors in the global flower industry. They are the third largest exporter of cut flowers globally, behind the Netherlands and Colombia. The cut flower industry in Ecuador began in 1991 when the U.S. enacted the Indian Trade Preference Act. This act helped Andean countries form legal industries such as growing flowers to combat the drug trafficking industry. As the industry grew, there were many environmental and working condition concerns that arose. So the flower label program was created to ensure workers were paid fairly above the age of 15 and working in safe conditions without any dangerous pesticides. The flower industry in Ecuador is known for its roses. 73% of the flowers Ecuador exports are roses. Ecuador's roses are grown at a high altitude because it doubles the growing time, which makes the roses have longer stems and big buds. A challenge that the Ecuador flower industry has endured is the flower trade the country has with Russia. In 2021, Russia was Ecuador's second largest client for cut flowers, after the US. However, the Ukraine-Russia war has decreased Ecuador's flower exports to Russia. It is important to understand the target audience in the cut flower industry so that businesses can market their flowers accordingly. I found that age, sex, and closest holiday are all important factors when distinguishing the flower target market. Baby boomers, Generation X, and Generation Y have varying buying trends. Baby boomers buy flowers mostly as gifts. Generation X buys flowers online as gifts or for themselves, and Generation Y buys flowers in person, mostly for gifts. In terms of sex, more females purchase flowers than males. 65% of all cut flowers are purchased by women. The closest holiday is also a determinant for the cut flower target audience. On specific holidays, the target audience changes and flower marketers need to adapt. 69% of all Mother's Day gifts are flowers. So around Mother's Day, the target market consists of people who are buying for their moms. In 2022, 22% of people in the US bought cut flowers as Valentine's Day gifts. This shows that the target market around this holiday consists mostly of people who are in relationships.